My name is Mila Lang and I'm 27. I never thought freedom would begin with a locked door and my own mother holding the key. I rang the bell to the guest house I'd lived in for 5 years. No answer. The door was bolted from the inside. I peeked through the window. All my things were gone. A stranger was touring the space with my mother. I knocked again. She opened the door halfway and said without a blink, "I thought you'd be back next week. It's being rented now." I stood there, stunned. "What about my things?" She shrugged. "Whatever was worth keeping is in the garage." No apology, no warning, just business, as if my life was hers to repurpose. And still, I smiled. "Okay, then this is the day I stop living on borrowed space." I turned and walked away, but that's just the moment things broke. The real story started long before that. Before we dive deeper, let me know where you're watching from. And if you've ever had to walk away from family to find yourself, you're not alone. Hit like and subscribe. This one's for you. I didn't always live in the guest house. I used to live in the main house, where the walls were warm and the table was loud and crowded. That was before I learned how silence could hurt more than shouting. Growing up, I thought my mother Clara was just cautious. She kept checklists for everything: meals, chores, manners, life goals. My sister Ava and I had matching calendars on the fridge with color-coded expectations. Green was for school, blue for extracurriculars, and red, always red, for anything she didn't approve of. She wasn't a cruel woman, just precise. Everything had a place, including her daughters. Dad, Harold, he was the quieter one. A good man, but the kind who believed peace came from not rocking the boat. So he didn't, ever. I remember one morning I came down the stairs in a denim jacket I'd saved up for, bold, cropped, not very Clara. She looked up from her coffee and said, "Is that what you're wearing to school?" I nodded, excited. She took one breath and replied, "It's your choice, of course, but just remember people notice what we wear." That was it. No yelling, no fight, just that quiet, elegant way of making me doubt myself. Years passed and I learned how to navigate her tone. I became adaptable. At school I was loud, confident, funny. At home I was agreeable, accommodating, quiet. By 21 I'd landed a job in communications at a boutique firm downtown. By 25 I was their lead strategist. My team called me fearless. My mother still called to ask what I was eating for dinner. When I suggested moving out, she gently discouraged it. "But why?" she'd ask. "We have the guest house now, it's just sitting there. You'd save money, you'd still be close." And she was right. It made sense, logical even. So I moved, 50 feet from the front porch I grew up on. But that 50 feet turned out to be paper thin. Because even in the guest house, I never truly left. I'd wake up to texts. "Don't forget your aunt's brunch at 10. I ironed the blouse you should wear for your client meeting. I made soup. I'll bring it by later. Don't eat junk again." Every favor came wrapped in expectation. Every meal, every errand, every suggestion, it was her way of keeping the umbilical cord intact, just invisible. There were moments I tried to push back. Once, I came home late from a date. The next morning, she was waiting in my kitchen. "You didn't text when you got in," she said calmly. I couldn't sleep. I was 26. I looked her in the eye and said, "Mom, I'm okay, you don't need to worry." She smiled. "I'm your mother, of course I do." Then she walked out, but not before leaving a list on the counter. Groceries, vitamins, a reminder to reschedule my dentist. That was the Clara way. Love, packaged as control. From the outside, it all looked perfect. A loving family, a smart daughter, a peaceful home. But behind closed doors, I was shrinking, bit by bit, inside a life that wasn't mine, and I thought I could handle it. Until the day she rented out my life, without even telling me. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to one particular morning, a Monday, when the cracks in the paint first caught my eye. It was early. Just past 7 a.m., I had a pitch meeting at 9, and my phone was already buzzing like a beehive on fire. 3 missed calls from Mom, 2 texts from Ava. "Call me ASAP. Don't wear the red blazer, it's too much." I sighed and tossed the phone onto the bed. I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting my outfit. A navy suit with clean lines, soft silk blouse underneath, power with polish. It was my signature. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a photo, from Mom. It was a picture of a salad. Homemade. With the caption, "Don't forget to eat something clean before your meeting. I left this in your fridge." I hadn't asked for it. I didn't even like beets. But there it was, waiting, like always. That morning, the guest house didn't feel like my space. It felt staged, curated, watched. As I walked toward my car, I saw her peeking out from the kitchen window of the main house. She waved, holding up her cup of tea like a toast. Like nothing was strange about watching your grown daughter leave for work like a toddler heading to school. At the office, things were different. My team looked to me for answers, for leadership. They didn't ask what I was wearing or if I got enough sleep. They didn't question whether I was eating enough greens. They trusted me. That morning's pitch? We nailed it. I walked out of the boardroom with 2 new contracts and a high five from the CEO. My assistant said, "You're a machine, Mila. Do you ever lose?" I smiled, not because I felt proud, but because I had learned how to perform, how to lead, how to win. And then I got in my car and drove 50 minutes back to a house where I was still treated like someone in training wheels. At dinner that night, I sat across from my parents. Clara had prepared chicken piccata, steamed vegetables, and a tart I didn't ask for. The table was set for 4, but only the 3 of us sat. Ava was working late. The conversation danced between polite and invasive. "How was your meeting today?" she asked, slicing her chicken. "It went well. We closed both clients." She nodded, unimpressed. "That's nice. Are you still eating lunch so late? It's hard on your digestion." Dad cleared his throat but stayed quiet. He always did. Then she turned to me, cheerful as ever. "Oh, and don't forget to wear that blue wrap dress on Sunday. You know, the one with the flowers? It's perfect for the fundraiser." "I already planned an outfit," I said lightly. She looked up. "But the blue one photographs better." I set down my fork. "Mom, I'm 27. I can pick out a dress." She didn't flinch. "And I'm 58. I've lived long enough to know what looks good on you." Silence settled in like fog, dense, uncomfortable. Dad sipped his wine. I excused myself early and walked back to the guest house. The lights were off. The salad was still in the fridge, untouched. I stood there in that quiet space, trying to breathe, trying to understand how love could feel like a noose you didn't even realize was tightening. And still, I stayed. Because that's what daughters do, right? We stay, we try, we adjust, until something breaks. It's strange how you can be the backbone of a family and still feel like an afterthought. I never lived recklessly. I wasn't the kind of daughter who blew off responsibilities or vanished for weeks chasing some dream. I was the reliable one, the planner, the one who always picked up the phone, even when it rang in the middle of a client call, like the time the garage flooded. I was leading a virtual strategy session with a global client when Mom called. Twice. I thought someone was hurt. I excused myself, stepped out of the room, and called her back. "The water heater's leaking. I need you to come home and help me move boxes before they get ruined." I paused. "Mom, I'm in a meeting." She sighed. "So am I, Mila. A crisis meeting with mildew?" I went. Of course I did. The next day, I paid for a new heater. No one asked me to. No one said thank you either. That was the rhythm of things. I earned more, so I contributed more. It wasn't even formal. It just happened, like it was expected. Gas bills, property taxes, Ava's student loan payments when she fell behind. Somehow all of it found its way to me, and I told myself it was fine, that I was lucky to be in a position to help, that this was what family did. That love meant showing up, even if no one clapped when you did. But late at night, when the house was quiet and the phone wasn't ringing, I'd sit in that little kitchen in the guest house and feel like a walking, talking safety net. I wasn't a daughter anymore. I was infrastructure. One weekend, I asked Mom to go for brunch, just us. I had planned a nice spot by the water, made the reservation, even pre-ordered her favorite lemon scones. She arrived 10 minutes late, sat down, smiled politely, and said, "I only have 45 minutes. I told Ava I'd help her organize her closet today." I laughed awkwardly. "Oh, I thought we'd spend the morning together." She sipped her tea and said, "We are." I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized she wasn't trying to be cruel. She just genuinely didn't see me as someone who needed time, care, or effort. I was the one who handled things, the reliable one. Reliable people don't get checked on, they get used. Still, I paid for brunch, walked her to the car, and told her to drive safe. She kissed my cheek and said, "Thank you for always being so thoughtful. Not like your sister. Ava's a sweetheart, but she's hopeless with money." That was her compliment. I was useful. Ava was adorable. And the saddest part? That was the closest I'd come to feeling seen by her in months. On the drive home, I remember glancing at my reflection in the rearview mirror. My makeup was perfect, my hair smooth, my posture elegant. I looked like a woman in control, but inside I was running on fumes. I used to think love and obligation were the same thing. That if you loved your family, you said yes, even when you were tired, broke, overwhelmed, or angry. And I said yes, again and again. When Dad needed a new laptop but didn't want to bother with the store, I researched the best models, drove to pick one up, and even spent 3 hours setting up his email. When Ava wanted to attend a photography workshop in New York but was short on funds, I covered the tuition, quietly. No receipt, no promise to repay. Mom found out later and said, "You shouldn't spoil her, she needs to learn the value of money." I almost laughed. I wanted to ask, when do I get to learn the value of rest? But I didn't say that. I just nodded and changed the subject. That's what I did best: redirect, deflect, absorb. I was the emotional buffer for the family, the one who made sure holidays went smoothly, that birthday cards were sent, that bills were paid, and egos were protected. I thought if I gave enough, worked hard enough, was good enough, eventually I'd be seen. Not just as useful, but as human. Instead, I became invisible. One Thursday night after a long client dinner, I came home to find a box on my porch. No note, no warning. Inside was a blender. I walked over to the main house and found Mom in the kitchen. "Did you order this?" I asked. "Oh, yes," she said, flipping through a recipe book. "Ours broke and I figured you needed one anyway. I had it shipped to your place. It was easier." I stared at her. "My place isn't your backup storage, Mom." She raised a brow. "It's a blender, Mila. Don't be dramatic." It wasn't about the blender. It was about the principle. But how do you explain to someone that your boundaries are being chipped away one silent assumption at a time? So I took the box back to the guest house, set it on the floor, and left it there for weeks. Every time I saw it, I was reminded of how little space in my life actually belonged to me. Not the fridge, not the weekends, not even the mailbox. People think toxic family dynamics are loud, obvious, but mine were quiet, polite, wrapped in good intentions, and that made them harder to name, harder to escape. I started pulling away, little by little. I stopped responding to every text immediately. I made excuses to skip Sunday dinners. I said no, gently, respectfully, but still, no. At first, no one noticed. Then, Mom started calling more, leaving voicemails with that subtle guilt woven into every sentence. "Just wanted to hear your voice. It's been a while. Are you eating properly? You know how you get when you skip meals. I ran into Mrs. Taylor at the market. She said her daughter just got promoted. Isn't that lovely?" They weren't questions. They were reminders, expectations, and for the first time I started asking myself, what happens if I stop showing up? What if I stop being the one who fixes everything? Would they still call? Would they still care? Or would they just find someone else to carry the load? One Sunday morning, I woke up to the sound of my phone vibrating across the nightstand. 7 missed calls, all from Mom. I sat up, heart racing, already imagining disaster, a hospital, an accident, something awful. But when I called back, she answered on the first ring, cheerful and breathless. "Oh, good, you're up. Listen, I need your help. Ava's friend is in town and we offered her the guest house for a few nights. Could you move your car so they can park in the driveway?" I blinked. "Wait, you offered the guest house?" "Yes, just for a few nights. Don't be difficult." I sat there in stunned silence, my heart pounding not from panic but disbelief. "Mom, you didn't even ask me." She sighed like she always did when I was being overly sensitive. "It's not like you're even home that much, and it's just temporary." I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just hung up, walked to the window, and looked out at my car, my space, now treated like a favor I owed them. That night I had dinner with Lana, my closest friend from college. We were sitting in a dimly lit bistro, nursing glasses of red wine, when she asked the question I'd been avoiding for years. "Why are you still there, Mila? Honestly." I stared at the candle flickering between us, swirling my wine slowly, searching for the cleanest version of the truth. "Because leaving would feel like betrayal," I whispered. She leaned in. "But staying feels like slow death." I wanted to argue, defend my mother, explain her love language, say it's just how things are, that she means well, that she does her best. But none of it came out. Instead, I just looked at Lana and said, I think if I left, she'd take it personally. Like I was rejecting her, not just the way she treats me. Lana reached across the table and took my hand. Maybe she needs to feel that. Maybe the only way she'll ever see you is if you disappear long enough for her to notice the silence. It hit me like a cold slap, because I'd never let her feel the silence. I filled every gap, replied to every message, made everything easier, cleaner, more manageable. But at what cost? After dinner, I drove home slowly. The streets were quiet, glowing in the yellow wash of streetlights. I pulled into the driveway and just sat there, engine humming. In that moment, I realized something terrifying. I was lonely. Not just alone, but unseen, unknown. My family loved the version O. Would they still say they loved me if I stopped performing? I turned off the engine and sat in silence, hands still on the wheel. For the first time in years, I didn't go inside right away, because inside was a house full of people who thought they knew me, but only ever asked questions that had answers they wanted to hear. I used to believe that families, no matter how complicated, always found their way back to each other. That love would eventually override ego, that silence would give way to understanding. But the truth is, silence can become a permanent language. Weeks went by and no one seemed to notice I'd started pulling away. I skipped 2 Sunday dinners. No one called to ask why. No texts, no questions, not even from Ava. And that hurt more than confrontation ever could, because it meant I was optional. I remember standing in the hallway of the guest house one night, scrolling through old photos, birthdays, beach trips, holidays where everyone was smiling like we had nothing to hide. But I remembered what wasn't captured, like how Mom would critique my outfit before family gatherings, or how Ava would whisper in my ear, "Just nod and smile, don't start anything." How I'd spend hours helping prep meals, clean up, and then watch my mother beam proudly as she introduced Ava to guests as the heart of our family. I wasn't even the spine. That kind of exclusion doesn't come in one big moment. It drips, slowly, over years. Until one day, you look up and realize you're the only one who remembers your birthday without needing a Facebook reminder. The final crack came in the form of a voicemail. It was Mom. Her voice calm, as always. "Hey, sweetie. Just letting you know we're planning a little brunch next Sunday. A few of Ava's friends from college will be there. You don't need to come. It's just a small thing." No invite, no request, just a heads up that I wasn't wanted. I replayed that message 3 times. It wasn't just what she said, it was how natural it sounded, as if I'd become someone she used to know, someone she now tolerated more than celebrated. I sat on the edge of my bed, holding the phone, staring at the floor. There were no tears. I was past that stage, just an emptiness, a hollow place that used to be filled with hope. I had bent over backward to stay close, to be useful, to be good, and all it got me was a polite distance, a place at the edge of my own family. That night, I opened my laptop and started looking at apartments across town. Nothing fancy, nothing big, just something that had locks I controlled, walls that were mine, a kitchen that didn't have lemon scones I didn't ask for. I wasn't ready to move. Not quite, but I was ready to imagine it. And sometimes that's where freedom begins, not with a suitcase, but with a thought you no longer push away. The thought that maybe you deserve better. Not perfect, not dramatic, just better. A life where your presence isn't assumed, where your absence is noticed. A life that belongs entirely to you. It was a Thursday afternoon when my client call got canceled last minute. I'd been on the road for 2 days, juggling back-to-back meetings, living off caffeine and granola bars. Exhausted and needing a break, I decided to drive home a day earlier than planned. I remember feeling something like comfort as I turned into our street. The maple trees lining the sidewalk, the way the sun hit the second-floor windows of the main house. It still felt familiar, even if it hadn't felt like home in a long time. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed a white SUV parked in front of the guest house. That was odd. Mom never let anyone park there unless they were family or friends close enough to qualify. I got out of my car and reached for my key, but when I stepped onto the porch, something felt off. There were shoes by the door, not mine. A small welcome mat I didn't recognize. A flower pot I'd never seen before. I rang the bell. No answer. I knocked, once, twice, then harder. Finally, I looked through the window. And there she was, my mother, walking through my guest house, clipboard in hand, smiling politely as she showed a young couple around. The woman was holding a folder. The man was pointing toward the built-in shelves I had installed last spring. I froze. For a second I thought maybe I was hallucinating. Maybe it was some open house for another space. Maybe... Then I saw it. My favorite coffee mug. Still sitting on the counter, the one with the chipped handle I refused to throw away. I knocked again, harder. This time, the door opened. Mom stood in the doorway, looking genuinely surprised. "Mila, you weren't supposed to be back until tomorrow." She smiled like she always did when trying to stay in control. "Oh, I thought you knew. We're renting the guest house, just short term. It'll be good income. Ava said you mentioned looking at places." "I didn't move out," I said, voice flat. She tilted her head. "Well, you haven't really been around, and we didn't think you'd mind." I stepped inside. My things were gone. The books, the framed prints, my yoga mat, everything that had made it feel like mine. "What did you do with my stuff?" She waved a hand. "We boxed it. It's in the garage, whatever was important." She said it like she was doing me a favor, like my life could be condensed into labeled bins and pushed against the back wall of a dusty garage. I looked around at the strangers now occupying the space where I used to make tea, take calls, cry quietly into my pillow. They smiled awkwardly, clearly unsure whether to stay or leave. I turned to my mother. "You rented out my home without asking. You went through my things. You didn't even call." She didn't blink. "I'm your mother, Mila. I don't need your permission to manage our property." That was the moment something broke. Not because of the betrayal, but because of how unsurprised I was. I stood in the doorway, feeling like a trespasser in my own life, and then I smiled, a quiet, calm smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Okay," I said. "Then I guess I'll stop living like a tenant." I turned around and walked toward my car, passing the SUV, the new welcome mat, the flower pot. Behind me, the door clicked shut. No apology, no explanation. Just the sound of a chapter closing. I didn't drive away. Not immediately. I sat in my car, engine off, eyes locked on the steering wheel, breathing through the pounding in my chest. I told myself I was calm, that I was handling this like an adult. Then I saw the side door of the garage cracked open, and something in me snapped. I walked toward it slowly, like I was walking into a crime scene, and in some ways I was. Inside, stacked against the far wall, were 4 boxes. One was labeled kitchen, one said clothes, the other 2 were just marked Miss C. I opened the nearest one. My journals. All of them. Not just stacked, but opened, some with sticky notes on the pages, like someone had been reading, highlighting, studying. I froze, my hands hovering over the paper like it might burn me. Then I saw it. A folded page from my most recent notebook, creased like it had been opened more than once. It was a piece I'd written months ago. A rough, rambling paragraph about how suffocating it felt to be loved only for the version of myself that pleased others. I had written, "Sometimes I feel like I'm not her daughter, I'm her projection, and every time I speak for myself it's like I'm betraying the role she gave me." My breath caught in my throat. I closed the notebook and stared at the ceiling of the garage, blinking hard. When I turned around, she was standing at the door. "Mom," holding a cup of tea like nothing had happened. "I figured you'd want to check on your things," she said casually. I didn't answer. She stepped closer, her tone light. "I read that entry, you know, the one about being my projection." I turned slowly. "You read my journal?" "I was worried," she said. "You've been distant, and I thought, if I understood what you were going through, you had no right." I cut in, my voice quiet but shaking. She looked hurt. "Mila, I'm your mother. That doesn't give you permission to invade my life." Her jaw tightened. "I was trying to help. You've changed. You don't come to dinners. You don't answer calls. I was afraid you were slipping." "Slipping?" I repeated. "You're isolating yourself. You're turning your back on us." "No," I said. "I'm finally learning to turn toward myself." She stared at me like I was speaking another language. I held up the journal. "These are my thoughts, my private thoughts, and you turned them into evidence." Her voice dropped into that calm, cold register she always used when she felt cornered. "I gave you everything, Mila. A roof, support, options. And I gave you space, respect, boundaries. You just never recognized them." The air between us was thick. Years of control, of unspoken rules and emotional manipulation, all pushing up to the surface. Finally, she said, "I don't know what happened to you." I looked at her, truly looked, and said, "Nothing happened to me. I just stopped pretending it didn't hurt." Then I walked past her, carrying my box of journals. For the first time, I didn't wait for her to say anything else. No parting shot, no passive-aggressive guilt. Just the sound of my footsteps on the driveway. Firm, clear, mine. I didn't pack much, just the essentials. Laptop, a few changes of clothes, my journals. Everything else could stay in the garage, in boxes I no longer wanted to open. There was no goodbye, no dramatic confrontation, just silence. The kind of silence that doesn't follow a fight, but something worse, recognition. A quiet knowing that whatever this had been between us, it was broken beyond repair. I sent one text to Lana. "Can I come stay for a while?" Her response came in under 10 seconds. "Always." The drive to her place felt longer than usual. Maybe because I wasn't just leaving a house. I was leaving an entire version of myself behind. The obedient daughter, the fixer, the buffer, gone. By the time I pulled up to her building, my hands were trembling. Not from fear, more like release. Like my body had been holding a tension I wasn't even aware of, and now that it was gone, it didn't know what to do with the space left behind. She opened the door before I even knocked. One look at me and she didn't say anything. She just pulled me in and wrapped her arms around me. I didn't cry, but my legs gave out a little and she held me tighter, like she knew I was trying to hold myself together by willpower alone. She led me to the couch, handed me a blanket, poured me tea. No questions, no commentary, just presence. And in that moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Safe. We sat in silence for a while, the kind that doesn't need to be filled. Then Lana finally spoke. "You look like someone who just walked out of a burning building." I let out a small laugh. It caught in my throat. "It kind of feels that way," I whispered. "Did she really rent your place out without telling you?" I nodded. "And read my journals, boxed up my life, gave my privacy to strangers." Lana shook her head slowly, then looked at me with that mix of disbelief and fierce protectiveness I'd always loved her for. "Jesus, Mila." I smiled, tired. "She thinks she's helping. That all of it is love." Lana raised an eyebrow. "No, that's control wrapped in a cardigan." We both laughed at that, a short breath of air to break the heaviness in the room. Then I said it. The sentence I hadn't let myself admit out loud. "I don't think she loves me. I think she loves the version of me that never says no." Lana leaned forward, her voice soft but steady. "Then maybe it's time you start saying no a little louder." I nodded, staring at the tea in my hands. "I just feel hollow. Like I'm not sad anymore, but I'm not okay either." "That's what grief feels like," she said. "You didn't just leave a place, Mila. You left a pattern." And she was right. Leaving wasn't the hardest part. Staying had been. Smiling through the discomfort, playing the role, swallowing myself to keep the peace. That was the real damage. And now I had no role left to play. Only myself. Whoever that turned out to be. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of coffee and the sound of Lana humming in the kitchen. It took a second to remember where I was. The unfamiliar ceiling, the weight on my chest. It wasn't sadness. It was stillness. A kind I hadn't felt in years. I sat up slowly, body sore in places that had nothing to do with sleep. My mind had spent the night sorting through years of memories like a warehouse in chaos. Some shelves collapsed, others cleared, a few I wasn't ready to open. Lana walked in, 2 mugs in hand. "Black, no sugar," she said, setting one down beside me, "just like you pretend to like it." I smiled. "Thanks." She sat down beside me, tucking her legs up underneath her. "So, what's the plan?" I took a sip before answering. The coffee was terrible and perfect. "I need my stuff, my real stuff, not just clothes and chargers. I want my books, my photos, the parts of me that didn't fit into their version of me." Lana nodded. "Do you want me to come with you?" I hesitated. "No, I think I need to do it alone." She didn't argue. She just said, "Okay, then let's make a list. What do you need? What's yours?" And just like that, we sat there with a yellow legal pad, scribbling down furniture, artwork, documents. Not just things, but proof that I had existed on my own terms, that I had a history outside of the role I'd played for them. As we reached the bottom of the list, Lana paused. I heard your mom leased a studio apartment near the park. She told Ava she was thinking of offering it to you. I froze. I didn't ask for that. I know. She's already trying to fix what she broke by building a new version of it, one she still controls. Lana didn't say anything. She didn't need to. I looked down at the page in front of me, my name at the top, my handwriting, my choices. I'm not moving into something she picked. Good, Lana said. You shouldn't. I exhaled, a deep, full breath I hadn't even realized I was holding. I think I want to find a place of my own. Nothing fancy, just something that's mine, she smiled. I know just the guy to call. Later that afternoon, I drove back to the house. It was quiet. Too quiet. I parked on the street instead of the driveway and let myself into the garage without ringing a bell. The boxes were still there, untouched since I last saw them. I loaded them into the car one by one. No one came out. No one stopped me. It was like I had already disappeared from their daily rhythm. Part of me wanted to knock on the door, to say something, to give them a chance. But another part of me knew that silence was the cleanest break. I got in the car, shut the door, and didn't look back. Back at Lana's, we unloaded everything into her spare room. She handed me a sparkling water and raised her can in the air like a toast. To the Great Migration, she said. I laughed. To boundaries, I replied. We clinked cans and sipped. It wasn't closure, it wasn't healing, but it was movement. It was the first brick laid in the foundation of a life I could actually own, and this time, I wasn't building it for anyone else. It was Harold who called. Not Mom, not Ava. Just a simple, quiet voicemail. Hey, Mila, if you're free sometime this week, I'd like to see you. Just talk. I'm not taking sides. I just miss you. I stared at my phone for a full minute after listening. He rarely called. He rarely said much at all. Growing up, he was the steady presence in the background, the one who paid bills on time, picked me up when Mom forgot, and nodded approvingly at my report cards. But he wasn't the type to intervene, even when he should have, especially when he should have. Still, something in his voice told me this wasn't about guilt. It was something else. Regret, maybe. Or finally, courage. We met at a small cafe near his office. Neutral ground. He stood when I walked in, like he always did, and gave me an awkward, one-armed hug that lasted just a second too long. We sat, ordered coffee. He stirred his twice, even though he drinks it black. Just nerves, I guess. So, he started. How's Lana? I smiled. Still smarter than both of us. Still undercharging clients. He chuckled, the sound thin but real. There was a long pause. Then he said, I didn't know she rented the place out, not like that. Not without talking to you. I nodded slowly. She didn't need to talk to me. She already made up her mind. Another pause. He looked down at his cup. She gets that way when she's afraid. Afraid of what? He shrugged. Losing control. Losing you. I leaned back, folded my arms. She never had me. Not really. She had my obedience, my fear of disappointing her. That's different. He winced. I didn't mean it as an attack. Just the truth. I know I should have stepped in, he said. Years ago. I saw the way things were. How hard she pushed. How much space she took up. So why didn't you? His face flushed slightly. Because keeping the peace felt easier than challenging her. And because you always seemed strong. Capable. I let that hang in the air. The compliment that was also the excuse. Being strong doesn't mean I didn't need protection, I said quietly. He nodded. Slowly. Like that sentence would live with him for a while. I failed you, he said. And for once, it didn't sound like a line. It sounded like a reckoning. We sat in silence. Not the stiff kind, the honest kind, the kind that follows truth. Then he looked up and said, You know, when you were little, I always thought you'd be the one to leave first. You had this fire in you, even when you were 5. I should have done more to keep that flame protected, not let it get smothered by routine and rules. I blinked hard. No one had ever said that to me before. I'm not asking for anything, he added. Not forgiveness. Not a seat at your table. I just wanted you to know. I see it now. I see you. I felt something break open in me, gently, like a seam coming loose, not a bone snapping. I'm still figuring things out, I said. That's okay, he replied. Just don't disappear completely." I looked at him, my father, the quiet man who had always stood back, who now, finally, stepped forward. "I won't," I said. "But next time, don't just wait for the fire to come to you." He smiled. "I won't." We left it at that. No promises, no plan to fix the past. Just two people meeting each other halfway, for the first time. I didn't expect Ava to offer help. She texted late one night, just a single sentence. "If you're going back to get your stuff, I'll come with you." We hadn't spoken much since I left. She wasn't part of the problem, but she wasn't part of the solution either. Ava was always in the middle, quiet, kind, careful not to upset the balance Mom had built. But something in her message felt different, like she had finally stopped tiptoeing around the cracks. We met in the driveway. She brought coffee, I brought cardboard boxes. Neither of us said much at first. Just a shared silence, almost gentle. "I told Mom we were coming," she said. "She's home." "Okay," I replied. We walked into the garage together. The air was cooler than I remembered. Boxes lined the shelves neatly, too neatly, like someone had gone through them again, resorted, rearranged, my life, filed and categorized. I opened the first one and started packing what still felt like mine. Ava hovered beside me. After a few minutes, she asked quietly, "Do you hate her?" I paused. "No," I said. "I don't hate her, but I can't keep living in a story where I only exist if I'm useful." She nodded, staring at the floor. "I think she's scared," Ava murmured, "of losing control, of losing us." "She already lost me," I said. "She just doesn't know it yet." Then, without warning, Mom appeared at the doorway, hair perfect, lipstick on, like we'd caught her in the middle of a magazine shoot. She folded her arms. "You didn't tell me you were bringing Ava." "I didn't think I needed clearance," I replied. A tense pause. "I just want to make sure you're taking the right things. Some of it—" "I know what's mine," I cut in, but my tone was calm, not angry, just final. Mom looked at Ava, then back at me. "I wish you'd come by the house, talk to me properly." I stood up straight. "I'm not here to ask permission, Mom. I'm here to end a chapter." Her eyes flickered. She wasn't used to that version of me, the one who didn't explain, didn't bend. "This is your home too," she said softer now. I shook my head. "It's your home. It's your rules. And I'm finally learning the difference between comfort and captivity." She stepped back, like the words had weight. I turned to Ava. "Can you grab the books from the top shelf?" She nodded quickly, grateful for the shift. We worked in silence for a while, the kind that's thick with everything no one says. As we loaded the last box into the trunk, Mom stood in the driveway, watching. I closed the trunk, walked over to her and paused. "I'm not angry anymore," I told her. Her expression flickered, something between relief and confusion. "But I'm done apologizing for needing space. I won't keep living under someone else's definition of love." She opened her mouth, then closed it. I waited. Nothing came. So I got in the car. Ava followed. We pulled away slowly, gravel crunching beneath the tires. I didn't look back this time, not because I didn't care, but because I finally cared more about where I was going than what I was leaving behind. The first night in my new place felt odd. Not bad, not lonely, just unfamiliar. The silence was different here. Not like the suffocating quiet at my parents' house where silence always carried judgment. This was the kind of quiet that left space for breath, for choice. The apartment was small, a one-bedroom walk-up with creaky floors and a view of someone else's fire escape, but it was mine. Every chipped tile and crooked cabinet belonged to a space I had chosen. That meant something. I unpacked slowly over the next few days, one box at a time. There was no rush, no one hovering over my shoulder, no passive-aggressive questions like, "Is this really where that goes?" Or, "Are you sure you don't need help?" I was sure. For once in my life, I was sure of something. I chose white curtains with gold trim, even though my mother always said gold was too flashy. I picked navy blue sheets. I hung string lights across the living room window, then took them down and hung them again, just because I could. And on the third night, I cooked myself dinner. Real dinner. Not takeout. Not toast. Pan-seared salmon, roasted vegetables, and rice. I played music while I cooked. Nothing fancy. Just an old playlist from college I hadn't listened to in years. As I stood there barefoot, glass of wine in hand, flipping salmon in a cheap pan, I realized something. No one was coming to interrupt this moment. No one was going to ask me to turn down the music, or question my food choices, or sit silently across the table with thinly veiled disapproval. It was just me, and it was enough. After dinner, I curled up on the couch with a throw blanket and watched a documentary about women who hiked solo across America. At one point, one of them said, "You don't really know yourself until you're alone without anyone's expectations echoing in your head." I paused the screen, rewound it, played the line again. That was it. That was what I'd been trying to put into words for weeks. I wasn't trying to rebel, I was trying to breathe, trying to learn what my voice sounded like without someone else's script. Later that night, I pulled out a small framed photo from one of the boxes. It was a picture of me at age 7, sitting in a tree, knees scraped, grinning with missing teeth. I looked free, unbothered, unafraid. I placed it on the nightstand beside my bed, not to remember the past, but to remind myself that I had always been in there somewhere. That girl. And now, finally, I was letting her lead. I went to sleep with the window cracked open, the sound of city air drifting in. It wasn't peaceful in the traditional sense. There were sirens in the distance, dogs barking, a neighbor coughing on their balcony. But for the first time in years, I didn't flinch at the noise, because none of it asked anything from me. It just was, like me. He called again. This time, it wasn't about anything specific. No apology, no update, just a simple question. "Can I come by?" I paused before answering. Not because I didn't want to see him, but because part of me still wasn't used to being asked anything. "Sure, tomorrow afternoon." When he arrived, he brought lunch. Sandwiches from a deli only he liked, and a small paper bag of ginger cookies, the kind he used to sneak me when Mom was on one of her sugar bans. He stood at the doorway for a second, just taking it in. "It's cozy," he said. I smiled. "That's polite for Tiny." He grinned. "No, it feels like you." We sat on the floor, eating sandwiches on mismatched plates. There was no table yet, no proper chairs, but I didn't feel the need to apologize for it. He looked around, chewing thoughtfully. "You hung your own shelves." "Yep, crooked, but I'm proud of them." He nodded. "You should be." There was a long pause. The comfortable kind. Then he said, "You know, I've been thinking a lot lately about how I used to think being a good father meant staying out of the way, letting your mother take the lead. She had a plan for everything." "Yeah," I said quietly. "She always did. I thought I was helping you by not interfering, but silence, it sends messages too." I didn't respond. Not right away. I let his words hang in the air. "I used to wish you'd speak up more," I said eventually, not to defend me, just to remind me I wasn't invisible. He looked at his hands. "I know." We sat in that soft ache for a while, not to dwell, but to honor it. Then he pulled something from his coat pocket. It was a keychain, a small brass lighthouse. "This was your grandfather's," he said. "He gave it to me when I left home. Said it was to remind me I could always find my way back. I want you to have it." I took it, running my fingers over the worn edges. "Thank you," I said, "but I'm not planning on coming back." He nodded. "I know. It's not about the house. It's about knowing you're never lost." We finished lunch without saying much more, but when he stood to leave, he turned and said something that stayed with me. "I don't know how to make up for what I didn't do, but if you ever want someone to show up, I'm here." And this time I believed him, because he wasn't saying it like a parent trying to fix things. He was saying it like a person trying to begin again, as equals. The apartment had finally started to feel like home, not because everything was in its place, it wasn't. I still had a stack of frames leaning against the wall, and the lamp in the corner flickered every third blink. But the space carried my energy now, not just survival, presence. That night, I made dinner again. Nothing fancy, just pasta with garlic and olive oil, a small salad, and a slice of bread I didn't bother to toast. I poured a glass of wine, lit a single candle even though no one was coming over. And I sat down at the tiny table I'd found at a thrift store 2 weeks earlier. For the first time, I didn't scroll through my phone. I didn't turn on the TV. I didn't fill the air with noise. I just sat, ate slowly, watched the candle flicker. And it hit me how strange and unfamiliar it was to be alone without feeling lonely. I'd spent years around people who made me feel isolated, years inside a house full of voices, but none that truly listened. Now, in the stillness, I could hear myself again. The thoughts weren't loud, just steady. You're okay. You're here. You're free. I looked around the room, noticing things I had picked out without asking anyone's opinion: the slightly too bright rug, the uneven stack of books on the shelf, the curtain I cut an inch too short and left that way because, well, who cares? It was imperfect, and it was perfect. I remembered how Mom used to say, a woman living alone is just waiting for something to begin. But this wasn't waiting. This was the beginning. The meal tasted better than it should have, not because of the seasoning, but because there was no rush, no tension, no need to explain why I preferred pasta to her Sunday roast. After dinner, I washed the dishes by hand. Slowly, methodically. Then I curled up on the couch with a blanket, turned on some jazz, and cracked open a book I'd meant to read for years. I didn't make it far. I ended up just sitting there, eyes on the page, brain wandering off into the quiet peace of a life no longer designed around someone else's demands. And I thought, so this is what it feels like to belong to yourself. No permission, no apology, just space. Space to be whole even when no one's watching. I'd never hosted Thanksgiving before, not even once. Every year it was the same routine. Mom planned the menu, assigned everyone their duties, set the table 3 days early, and hovered behind you like a hawk as you placed the forks. No one dared touch the centerpiece. But this year was different. This year, I was the one setting the table, with mismatched plates and a wobbly secondhand table. There were only 5 of us: Dad, Mom, Ava, Lana, and me. That was all the apartment could hold. I had to borrow 2 folding chairs from the neighbor across the hall. And still, it felt right. Lana arrived early with a bottle of wine and a pie she didn't bake but transferred to a ceramic dish so it looked like she did. She kissed my cheek and whispered, "You sure about this?" I nodded. "Yeah, it's not about fixing anything, I just want to try." She didn't push. She never did. She simply poured us each a glass of wine, turned on some quiet music, and helped me light candles that didn't match but smelled like cinnamon. Dad and Ava showed up next. Ava brought cranberry sauce in a mason jar and immediately started helping with the salad. Dad stood awkwardly in the doorway, holding a tiny bouquet of grocery store flowers and a bottle of cider. "For the host," he said. I smiled. "Thank you." Then came Mom. She knocked, even though the door was open. She stepped inside carefully, as if the floor might give out beneath her. Her eyes scanned the room, the uneven rug, the thrifted shelves, the lack of a formal tablecloth, and I saw it in her face. The urge to comment, to correct. But she didn't. She just handed me a dish, mashed potatoes in one of her old ceramic bowls, and said, "I wasn't sure what you had planned." "Perfect," I replied. "Thank you." We sat around the table, shoulders closer than usual, knees bumping under the edge. No one quite knew what to say. Lana broke the tension with a joke about the folding chairs and how one of them might be older than Mila. Laughter, small, safe. We passed plates, poured cider and wine, and somewhere between the green beans and the stuffing, something started to shift. The silence began to soften. Ava told a story about work. Dad talked about a customer who tried to pay in Canadian coins. Lana chimed in with a story from college that made us all laugh so hard we almost spilled the gravy. And then, without warning, Mom spoke. "I was afraid," she said, not looking at anyone in particular, "that if you moved away, you'd forget me. That if I let go, I'd lose everything." The table fell quiet. She looked up, at me. "I didn't know how to love you without managing you. I thought if I didn't stay involved, I'd become irrelevant." I took a slow breath. My first instinct was to fix it for her, to comfort her. But I didn't. Instead, I just let her speak. "And I'm learning," she continued, "that love doesn't always mean closeness. Sometimes it means stepping back, letting people become who they need to be, even if it's without you." I reached across the table, took her hand, just for a moment. "I'm still here," I said, "just not on your terms anymore." She nodded, eyes glistening. Dinner continued. Softer now, real. Not everything was solved. But something sacred had happened. We'd told the truth, and everyone was still sitting at the table. After dinner, everyone drifted toward the couch, the kitchen, the soft corners of the evening. Lana and Ava took care of the dishes without being asked. Dad leaned back in a creaky chair with a cup of coffee, pretending not to eavesdrop while Lana teased Ava about her playlist. I stepped out onto the small balcony. It overlooked the alley, not exactly scenic, but the air was crisp and quiet. I wrapped my sweater tighter and leaned against the railing. A minute later, the sliding door opened behind me. Mom stepped out. She didn't say anything at first, just stood beside me, both of us looking out at the brick wall across the alley like it held answers. I could feel her searching for words, could almost hear the internal monologue she was fighting to hold back. She was never good with silence, but this time, she didn't fill it with questions or suggestions, just breath. "I didn't think you'd invite me," she said finally. "I didn't think you'd come," I replied. She gave a soft, dry laugh. "I almost didn't." We stood there, shoulder to shoulder, not touching, but close enough to feel the warmth of each other's presence. "I wasn't ready," she said, "to see you this way. So whole. And not because of me." Her voice cracked slightly on the last word. I turned to face her. "I didn't get here in spite of you, Mom. I got here after you." She looked at me, eyes searching. "I needed to step away to find out who I was without the constant noise," I said. "It doesn't mean I don't love you. It just means I needed space to love myself, too." Her chin trembled. "Do you hate me?" she whispered. "No," I said softly. "But I had to stop letting your fear become my compass." She covered her mouth with her hand and looked down, nodding. I waited, letting her feel whatever she needed to feel. "I don't know how to undo it all," she finally said. "The things I did, the way I tried to shape you into someone I understood." "You don't have to undo it," I said. "You just have to stop repeating it." That silence again, gentle this time, real. She stepped closer, not quickly, like she was asking permission with her body, and then she opened her arms. I didn't hesitate. I walked into them. It wasn't a long embrace, or a perfect one. Her shoulders shook once, and I felt her breathe me in like she was memorizing who I had become. When we pulled apart, there were no more words, just a kind of truce. The soft understanding that we wouldn't go back, but we didn't have to stay broken either. Inside, Ava laughed at something Lana said, and Dad pretended to be annoyed by the noise. The table was still covered in crumbs and empty glasses. The kitchen smelled like pie and dish soap. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe around her. Not because she'd changed completely, but because I had, and because I'd stopped waiting for her to give me permission to become who I already was. She looked at me once more before heading back inside. This time there was no smirk, no tension, just softness. I stayed outside a moment longer, the chill brushing my skin in a way that made me feel alive, not alone. Then I whispered into the air, more to myself than anyone else. "Freedom doesn't mean you love less. It means you love real." And I walked back in. Everyone left around 9. There was no dramatic goodbye. Just hugs, laughter, clinking dishes, and the lingering smell of cinnamon and roasted garlic in the air. Lana was the last to go. She winked at me as she slipped on her coat. "You did it," she said. "A holiday without anyone crying or storming out." "Barely," I smiled. She held my hand a second longer. "I'm proud of you, Mila." When the door closed behind her, I stood alone in the quiet. Not the kind of quiet that feels like absence. The kind that feels earned. I washed the last glass, turned off the lights, and stepped out onto the balcony once more. The city was alive in the distance, pockets of gold and red blinking through buildings. Car horns echoing far off. Voices from a bar down the street, just close enough to remind me that life was still going, still humming, still breathing. I wrapped the blanket tighter around my shoulders and leaned against the railing. There was a time when I thought freedom meant escape. Running, cutting ties, burning bridges with a confident smile and never looking back. But I've learned something else. Freedom isn't loud. It doesn't slam doors or make declarations. Freedom whispers. It's the quiet knowing of who you are, the peace that comes when you stop seeking permission. The strength to sit with the discomfort of someone else's disappointment and not let it change your course. Tonight, I didn't feel brave or victorious. I just felt settled. Not finished, not fixed, but standing on solid ground, maybe for the first time. I thought about Mom, about how she looked at me tonight. Not with control or critique, but with curiosity. Like she was finally meeting me, not the version she spent years trying to shape. And maybe, just maybe, she liked what she saw. I thought about Dad. Quiet, steady, flawed, trying in his own late, gentle way to show up now, even if he hadn't known how to before. I thought about Ava and Lana, the women in my corner, not saving me, just reminding me I didn't have to shrink to be loved. And most of all, I thought about the version of myself I used to silence, the one who asked for space, the one who wanted more, the one who dared to say, "This is not enough for me," and meant it. I lit one last candle, just because I wanted to. And I let the wind play with the flame until it danced wild but never went out. There, under the night sky, I spoke softly, not for anyone else to hear, but for the woman I used to be. You're not selfish. You're not cold. You are allowed to want your own life, and you're allowed to love people without letting them own you. I closed my eyes and let the city hum beneath me. Not as a threat, not as a challenge, but as a rhythm I could finally move in tune with. This wasn't the end of anything. It was the start of something quieter, truer. And for once, I didn't feel the need to narrate it to anyone else. I just stood still, breathed, and let it all be enough. There's something quiet about closure. It doesn't arrive with trumpets or confetti. It doesn't knock down your door. It just sort of sits with you. One morning I woke up and realized I didn't dread checking my phone anymore. There were no passive-aggressive texts from Mom, no unspoken expectations lingering like smoke in the air. I had made space, and people either stepped into it respectfully or didn't. That peace, it felt earned. At work, I started showing up differently. Not louder, not more impressive, just more me. I spoke with clarity instead of seeking approval. I said no without over-explaining. I stopped staying late just to feel valuable. And the strange thing? Nothing collapsed. In fact, things got better. My team respected the boundaries I had once been terrified to set. My clients listened when I spoke, and for the first time in years, I left meetings without replaying every sentence in my head. At home, the rituals became sacred, lighting a candle before bed, making coffee in silence, reading with my feet tucked under the blanket, the city buzzing softly outside. These weren't big things, but they were mine, and every small act said the same quiet truth. I belong to myself now. It's not dramatic. It's not always easy. Sometimes I still flinch at old patterns, still feel the urge to ask for permission I no longer need. But I catch it, I breathe, and I choose again. Freedom didn't come in a single moment. It came in hundreds of them, and now it's woven into everything I do. Over time, my relationship with Mom found a new rhythm. We started with small check-ins. Her, "How was your day?" And me, quiet in a good way. No lectures, no lists. One Sunday, she sent me a photo of a garden she was working on, hydrangeas and lilies. I replied with a thumbs-up emoji and a short sentence. "Looks peaceful." That was it. Not an essay, not a justification. She liked it. Then, weeks later, she showed up at my door, unannounced for the first time. I paused, then let her in. She didn't bring potatoes or critiques. She brought a small pot of mint, the kind she remembered I used to like in iced tea. I set it on the windowsill, watered it together. "Thank you," I said. I didn't ask why she came, didn't ask for explanations. She just nodded. We sat side by side. No agenda, no need to fill silence. Just two women learning how to be in each other's lives differently. "Once," she said softly, "I'm proud of you." It wasn't performance-based, it wasn't a compliment with an agenda, it was real. I saw her try, sometimes stumble, at letting me be. I learned to let her love without giving up who I'd become. Our Sunday calls became weekly, not because she demanded them, because we both wanted them. Sometimes we talk about the past. Other times it's about the new book I'm reading or the mint in the kitchen. No guilt, no duty, just presence. It feels tender. Like a relationship reborn, not by erasing the hurt, but by choosing to move forward anyway. Mom and I aren't perfect now, but we're real. And every once in a while I catch her looking at me like she's rediscovering her daughter. It's quiet, it's imperfect, but it's ours. I used to think freedom meant walking away, that if I could just leave behind the pain, the guilt, the impossible expectations, I'd finally feel whole. But now I know. Freedom isn't about cutting people out. It's about keeping yourself whole while letting others stay in your life. It's about loving without losing, standing firm without hardening your heart. It's about being able to say, "I care about you, but I won't abandon myself for you anymore." That's not rebellion. That's healing. And it took me years to understand the difference. Now when I look in the mirror, I don't see a woman who's run away. I see a woman who stayed, with herself, through the silence, through the conflict, through the tears and long nights and quiet rebuilding. And if you're listening right now, maybe with your own pain still fresh, or your own boundaries just beginning to form, I want you to know something. You don't need anyone's permission to take up space in your own life. You are not too much. You are not ungrateful. You are not selfish for needing peace. You're simply someone who finally understands that love without respect isn't love at all. And if that truth makes you feel alone today, just remember, you're not. There's a quiet army of us out here, learning to live differently, one breath at a time. So if this story touched you, leave a comment. Let me know where you are in your own journey. And if you haven't already, hit like, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because stories like these, they remind us we're not the only ones choosing ourselves after all.